Welcome back to the Dave's Diary set of endless videos for the workshop series. But what we have here is something that you probably will be scratching your head at. What on earth are you looking at? And it is the latest thinking and understanding for using a nut and thread assembly for making 3-4-5 triangulation or have an approach for using the 3-4-5 triangulation method for drilling your bench dog holes. If you've followed some of the videos previously, you'll know that I've got some laser cut steel, this being part of that system or approach, which, as far as I can tell, will be as accurate as I can get for my position for my guide bushes. Now, this isn't dependent for what's going to follow. This isn't required for what I'm going to talk about, but I'm using it to show or to hold the parts that I will be discussing. In fact, this could be a bit of timber, a bit of melamine, hard plywood, or whatever. So that's the only requirement, is that it locates this accurately and as rigidly as I can get it, because there is a small amount of movement. You can probably just see the wriggle, which will also be addressed at some stage in the future. Now, I wanted, and this is my first attempt, I wanted to use two different nuts, a 16 and a 12mm nut, and join them together because, after all, a 16mm threaded rod, a standard M16, has a 2mm pitch. So 2mm can be, if I turn the nut 50 times, 50 full revolutions, would make it move 100mm. Oh, is that right, says I. Well, yes. Well, isn't that the distance you want for your increments for your 3-4-5 method? Exactly. So I thought that a 16mm rod with a 2mm pitch would be a jolly good component to make this project up with, so quite logical. Oh, well, that was the start of the rabbit hole. Logic, yes. Practical, up to a point. Doable, with some understanding. But it was getting to the understanding which was the unforeseen hurdle. It's, I think, at this stage, doable, unless there's something else unforeseen. But I had not understood back then that this is, while a good idea, won't hold the bush and therefore the drill exactly in the right position. It would have to be 100% of the time held level for the bushings to drill properly. So I thought, okay, can't we drop the nut down onto the surface and make this sort of assembly where the nut sits down on the surface, thumbs up, and this one can then be presented up, and in my case, glued, just super glued. That's all I did here, and it did a really good job. I was quite surprised. I've had some mixed outcomes with super glue in the past, so I wasn't holding my breath. But I see other people using it successfully, so I tried it again. I gave it another chance, and it worked. Now, that takes care of this having to support anything, because it's now no longer supporting anything. Okay, it just sits there, and it is as plumb to the surface as I can probably expect, because this is only part of the approach. In this plate, which is part of the laser cut system, not part of what I'm talking about here, I've got the thread part of one of these guide bushes, and I chopped it off so that it would fill this roll. It becomes the centering or locating position for my guides to go into, and these alignment pins. That was an aside, but this is being now used for this particular jig. So yay. And then I thought, all I'll do is I can glue that in there and I'm happy as Larry. But what I did to achieve that is I had to grind off a section of the nut to allow it to sit down flush, because I can't sit it on their normal faces like this, because I had no surface to glue my nut to. So I created a surface. Kind of makes sense. But now the problem is, nuts and threads, while made accurately, as we can get, aren't made and probably don't have any manufacturing consideration for the flats to align along that threaded rod. There is no need for it. So that when I move my nut 50 revolutions, yes, it will be 100 millimeters away, but it may well be that it is tilted up one way or the other and not flat at all for the one that I've just created on here. So it could be any rotation, but exactly 100 or 50 or whatever millimeters away. Wow, that makes it very difficult to glue up two flat surfaces when one of them may be canted off on an angle. Darn. And I thought, hang on a minute. If I make it irrelevant where the position is, like I'm moving it backwards and forwards here as if it can be along the threaded rod, if I set a jig up where in this case it is exactly at this point or this point or this point, this one doesn't alter. And joining it together, no matter which way, when I turn this particular full assembly around, move it by 50 revolutions, I move the whole thing 100 millimeters. I've neutralized the inaccuracies of the nut position. Yes, it's turned to 50 millimeters, 50 revolutions, therefore it's a 100 mil movement. This goes with it. The two of them are set up independently, and then combined, and then, yay, I've got my accurate positionable assembly. It's eradicated the potential for the faces to have to align. I reckon that is really worth something. Now, whether that something's going to be sufficient for this to be usable, we've yet to see. But the beauty is, I can have a little jig like this. Don't worry about this, remember. This could be, as I said, plywood or melamine or a solid bit of timber. But if I can locate this part and this part together with this part, then I can make up as many of these as I want. Why? When I've got the laser cut alternative or the better alternative, well, this one is way more flexible than my laser cut one. I spent half a leg and half an arm buying it and getting it made. Why would I consider doing something like this? Well, as I said, flexibility. And this means this one assembly, take the threaded rod out of course, that one assembly, effectively that, with a threaded rod in it, a guide bush in it, that can be positioned anywhere down the threaded rod. Now, the sharp-minded of you will think, yeah, but that's only good in 2 millimeter increments. So yeah, it will take care of your 0, 50, 100, but it can't do 25 or 75 mil. And I go, yeah, okay, let's put that aside for one moment. If it does the majority of my required spacings, isn't that good? Yes, it's okay, David. But you have to give a little bit more. And I go, okay, what say I revolve this and the number of times to get 32 millimeters? Well, that's divisible by 2. What about 64? Oh, that's divisible. What about 96? Oh, crikey, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Well, you've probably seen where I've been, but you can see where I'm going with this is that it is more flexible with the with the even number increments or multiples. Okay, but David, I want to be able to go to 25 and 75. I go, I'm glad you asked that as a requirement. When we set this jig up, we can set it up perfectly and then move it 1 millimeter, which is 1/2 turn of this thread. I can then make up my units that I want, move it back, the thread back that half revolution, and I'm back to my setup position. Meaning, I can damn well do anything in any size, any increments I want. If I wanted to make some weird-ass spacing for whatever reason, I can. Also, and I've not even considered this until I've since I've been talking about it. I hadn't considered it until just now, in other words. I can make some very accurate alternate spacings, nothing to do with a division of 1 or 2, or multiples thereof. If I put the fitting, the assembly, in this hole and in this hole, I can space it at 1.414 or 141.4 millimeters apart. That's that distance. It is the hypotenuse, the measurement of a 100 by 100 spacing. So this is 141.4 millimeters. I can do that. Don't know why I'd want to do that, but I can do that. It will give me a squaring method unrelated to the 3-4-5 method. It could be that you want to do that to create square blocks or jigs or whatever using that approach rather than the 3-4-5 method. So that's another way that something like this and this can actually work in a way it wasn't originally thought about using. So I'm thinking, yes, David, you've paid the money, the half an arm and half a leg for your laser cut approach, but if you have this assembly there and used in another situation, you can cater for all those alternative requirements, because 100 mil spacings is fine, but all those alternate spacings are good too. This is why I had this plate. I've had it drilled out or laser cut, and I've threaded it. God, there's a lot of holes in there to drill and then tap, but I've done that to allow the 25 millimeter spacings. Yay! This is 20 millimeter spacings. Yay! But it doesn't cater for 32 millimeter or 64 or 96. I'd have to have another plate cut, which I should have done, which I didn't do. Oh, this can do it. And it can do all those other weird ass things like that one that's on the angle this way. So, yeah, worth carrying on with? I think so. Beneficial to many people? I don't know. But I think it is beneficial to those that are wanting to do this and have that flexibility. I'm sure you would be able to work out where to get a 16 millimeter nut, a 12 millimeter nut, drill the nut out to 13 millimeters, tap it with a 14 by 1 millimeter tap, and then that means that you can thread the guide bushings in, which you can get, and I've talked about. You can thread it in, and then you've got this facility. Wriggle. You've got this facility for creating this assembly. Easy, not straightforward. So that's the way of looking at it. So, yeah, yay. Now, with that said, I'm going to end this because it's the fourth attempt to make this flaming video. I like it. I'm going to go down this route a little bit more, make up a little jig. It'll have that facility of turning it and, etc., to make that 1 mil difference guide, and then I'm pretty much done. Says I'll probably come up with some other reason it doesn't work or has a problem, but I think I might have solved my problem I came up with about 24, 48 hours ago. Yay. Now, what's it sitting on? Well, it's sitting on the components, or some of the components for my sanding station, and I've been planing off the clashing strips today. I glued it up yesterday, and I'm needing to get back and doing a wee bit more of this. I've got some of these panels done. They're completed. They're for the miter saw station, and then the sanding station. So I'm well on the way to getting a lot of these projects out of the way. And I need to, because I've got a job I need to do that I should have done months ago. But now that I'm progressing along there, I'll have these all planed up today. And this is Monday for your information. And then in the next day or two, I should have it assembled, the sander onto the new station, and some of this gear stored away, at least temporarily, in its position. So all going quite well, actually. Yay. And then I've got other jobs coming up as well. Rightio, that's it. That was the Dave's Diary for just now. There might be another one today, you never know. But I really do like that. Having solved yet another tolerance problem is important. The other thing was, I was wanting to make a lock nut positionable so that I can lock the thread or the assembly in its position so it doesn't accidentally spin round or do something untoward. That's still a bit of a bugbear. The reason being is that having ground it down, the nut that is, I can't then wind the lock nut onto it because it's a bigger dimension than the ground off part. And I want this nut sitting on the material when I go to use the assembly itself. So this is a bit of a nuisance, I've got to say. So I'll have to come up with a solution for that. The argument would be grind it off, bang it on, get some multi-grips or something, turn it on, lock it in position, and you're done. That might be the only alternative. And that just happens to be a lock nut that you can either buy, or like me, I cut another nut in half. So we do these projects. But anyway, that might be a good idea. If I get it done, you'll get more videos. If not, I'll also make a video saying, don't go down this route. The other ones were a good idea. I leave them up because you might be able to find the solution or use an alternate way of achieving the outcome that you want. So it's not necessarily wasted, is it? Okay, that's it. Off to have a cup of tea, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye now.